We're rolling.
Oh my God, Sex and Prayers.
Uh-huh.
Another edition, another day, another edition of Sex Prayer. How does that feel for you?
Exciting.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Your excitement is exciting me.
Oh, is it?
Uh-huh. There's
Yeah.
a build-up happening right now. I'm lighting up.
This is called foreplay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's called podcast foreplay.
Yeah, ooh. It's working.
Good.
It's working.
What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about sex, but more than that,
Yes.
we wanted to talk about what sex means to us, because this came up for me in a book that I was reading, and I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a partner where I've talked explicitly about what sex means to me, what the experience of it brings to me, how it fulfills me, what needs of mine it meets. I've never had that back and forth dialogue with a partner. Have you ever had that?
No.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too.
And
it'll be interesting to see where we overlap, and also just, it feels like it's going to be revelatory, because it really drops us into, well, what is the meaning of why we even drop into this space in the first place?
Why do we even do this?
Like, yeah, besides pleasure, obviously, besides pleasure, it's like, what's the actual, if we're talking sex as prayer and sex as ritual or as a devotional act, like, what does that mean to us? Because we could be in the act of it all day long. Go ritual. This is ritual, baby. I love it.
Yes.
But I think having an understanding of what it actually means to both of us is probably going to change our sex game quite a bit in a good way.
Yeah, well, I'm intrigued to have that conversation. Like, on some level, I feel like there's this implicit, unspoken understanding that we already have.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why we work well already. And then to have this explicit, open, conscious dialogue is going to be really interesting. I think it's, and we haven't prepped this at all.
No.
Like, we've been wanting to have this conversation for weeks now.
Yeah. Since it came up for me, I was like, we should talk about this. That was a couple
on the
weeks
flight
ago.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been nearly 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh,
isn't it?
wow.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
That we've been, I don't know, subconsciously avoiding the conversation.
I don't know why. We're just like, let's just talk about other things. And I think originally I wanted to have the conversation between us.
Yeah.
Just so we had that a little bit more dropped in. But it feels great to be doing this on the fly in the moment. And I also think that it just shows, and it's going to reveal, like, what these conversations can actually be like in the moment. Where we're like, okay.
I mean, for me, this is conscious relating, like,
It's the hot
live
spot.
example.
Yeah. We're in the hot seat and see how we relate.
Yeah, this hot seat. And
It's getting hot.
I think it's also, what does sex mean to you, and why is it important that we have this conversation as people in union, as people in relationship? It's interesting to me that I've never had this conversation with myself, let alone with a partner. It's something that's...
I love this.
Yeah, it's something that's so... sex is a part of everyone's life to a degree, whether you're having it or not. And
you came from it.
Exactly. And it's a part of personal relationship to self as well as relationship to other. So it's a really interesting, important conversation to have, and I'm glad that we're having this opportunity to do it.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think too it also creates space for there not to be any assumptions, because like what we've experienced in the retreats that we've done are in our own independent journeys is like men and women, tend to view sex differently. It means different things to different people. And without having that conversation, I know that in my past experiences, I was very assumptive that what sex meant to me meant to my partner. And I can see how when I'm going down the timeline, just even in this moment, how that really robbed me of the intimacy I probably could have had the awareness that this is even a conversation to have with your partner, been in my fields. So I feel excited for us to have it. It's like, I'll be curious what it is for you and also what it is for me, because even though it's been in our field for a couple weeks, I haven't been sitting there thinking about it.
No, neither have I. I think that's interesting that we haven't been thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I'm curious. No, I'm wondering if the apprehension, or any sort of apprehension we've had to having the conversation, is perhaps rooted in a fear of a revelation that we don't want to know. Like, oh, this is important to you, this is not really important to me.
Yeah.
Or, oh,
we're over!
Yeah. But actually, I think it's the other perspective of, as important as this conversation is, and I think it's really healthy that we're having it, it's not felt necessary.
Yeah, I agree. But
and not taking it. And not taking. I think the conversation is only going to add to our relationship. It's not going to take anything away from it.
It feels valuable in that sense, and I think we'll also tweak how we show up for each other.
Yes.
It feels like anytime there's an opening into my experience, right, where I get to share my experience and what things mean to me or my translation of them, there always comes this bit. It's like, wow, it's like tweaking, right, and attuning to a different level. And so, granted, do we feel like we've needed to have this experience? No, because we're pretty much on the same page. And I see how after we leave this experience, our sex prayers, our devotion, and everything will attune to whatever reveals itself in this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it, is it gives us this opportunity to go deeper in a place where we might not have even known something was missing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had a conversation yesterday, kind of in this space, and I felt that was really powerful and beneficial and enlightening for me and us. So yeah, I think this is a great thing to do, and I love that we're having this conversation very openly and live, and an invitation for people to see, like, oh, this is conscious intimacy. This is what it can look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sacred pause. Sacred.
Oh my gosh, maybe we should do a video on sacred pause.
Sacred unpause.
Sacred pauses are great. Actually, communication. That can be in communication.
Yeah. I mean, would love to do a conversation on sacred pause at some point. Yeah. Maybe season 2.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to get through. Oh, we're going to... Yeah. I'm sure it'll come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited. Okay.
So sex.
Sex. Tell me about sex.
Sex. I'd love for us to... Well, we get banned on Instagram for. Just saying the word.
You're not allowed to say that word. It is a banned word.
It is forbidden. Don't talk about the sex.
Don't talk about sex.
Kids might hear you and learn something about their bodies and anatomy and relating. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse for this particular moment. So, what this book brought up was around asking couples what sex means to them. And we thought that it'd be an interesting approach to do what it means physically, what it means to us emotionally, and also what it means to us spiritually, especially because we're talking about bringing God into the bedroom, our sex and spirit different. But also things that seem more basic, like what is your ideal frequency? What would fulfill you frequent-wise? Duration.
I want every
Slow
day
and steady, fast or hard.
Every day of the week for 4 hours.
4 hours.
4 hours every day.
Then I want breakfast in bed every day for 4 hours.
You want breakfast in bed for 4 hours? 4 hours of
breakfast in bed, which is 4 hours of morning ritual. And then I'll give you 4 hours of sex prayers a day. And we're pretty much just going to have no jobs, and this is living in sexual devotion like monks.
Yeah.
But not like monks at all.
Yeah. They're the Church of Sex.Prayers.
We're the sex monks.
Sex monastery. Sex monastery. Please, yes,
Yeah,
go on.
anyways, so...
Yes, all these nuanced questions.
All these nuanced questions, yeah. And so I'm curious for you, like, what does sex mean for you in a physical sense? Like, physically, what does the act of sex bring to you? Your physical body.
Yeah, and I also want to say thank you for the invitation to view it in a very tantric sense of looking at the layers of consciousness. It's really a nice way to approach this. And for anyone...
As a tantrician, I didn't even know it. Look at that. There's some codes coming through, baby.
Yeah, and I just very quickly speak into the layers of consciousness.
Yes, please.
So there's the external layer, which is technically a sixth layer. Then there's the physical layer, the body. Then there is the mental, emotional, because in tantric philosophy, the heart and mind are seen as they're seen as opposite ends of the same spectrum.
Okay.
So yeah, physical, body, mind, heart, mind, and then yeah, the spiritual, or like this, the energetic, and then the God layer, if you will.
Okay.
There's an extra layer, but I won't get into that.
Okay.
So, physically, what does
it bring you?
What does sex bring me?
What does it mean to you?
Aside from the obviousness of physical pleasure, and I feel like it's worth mentioning that because it's such a big part of what sex can be.
Yeah.
The physical pleasure aspect of it.
We can't ignore that.
Can't ignore it. It'd be
physical aspect.
Right,
of,
yeah. I think it'd be remiss to ignore it. I hold it as a very somatic practice. It's a way for me to get into my body in an environment where I'm sharing that with the person that I'm with. I'd say that it's something that I haven't done as much to the same degree in my solo practice. My solo practice has in the past been very focused on the gratification aspect of it rather than the devotional. But when I'm in union with someone, then it is very much about the somatic, physical sensation, the physical experience of getting to be embodied with another body. It's physical intimacy, of exploration through sensation, and getting to enjoy the senses of my body in a very special setting.
And do you go into sexual experiences with that in mind? That's like, wow, I've been really in my head a lot today and I just want to get into my body. I'm going to evoke a sexual experience.
I think I've been doing it unconsciously, but not consciously. I think that's why I've had a very strong connection with and draw towards sexual practice, because it was healing for me in that way, in a way that wasn't present in the rest of my life. Like, I have my yoga practice and I have my handstand practice, but my yoga practice to a degree where I do enjoy getting into my body and the sensation of that. But there's something playful about sexual exchange that I find in regards to the body. Like, I highly enjoy getting to play with your body.
Yes, I know that.
Yes. Oh, I know.
That is a fact, everybody.
That is a fact.
Definite fact.
Yeah. But I enjoy getting to play with your body, with my body. And the the energetic exchange that creates. Yeah, aside from the physical stimulation of gratification in the sexual energetic space of the genitals, there is the ability and invitation to enjoy all of it. And I very much appreciate that.
I think that's why it's so fun when we drop into blindfold space in the bedroom, because then it is all about somatic body.
Yeah.
And even kind of shaking off those layers to get into the core of that love part of us. That's like, okay, it's going to take a couple paddles here to get the day off me, and then it's going to take a little bit of licking here to like get me into my like sensual body. And even that's like a layered process. But also like deeply somatic.
Yeah. And I didn't really appreciate that connection between how it is such a somatically engaging and focused practice, like it, as a healing modality.
Yeah, I love that. And I would say a majority of people would probably relate to that. Not really thinking about it being a healing practice and what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Would you care to speak more into that? Like from your point of view of...
Yeah, I mean, even just to what we were just talking about, where there's layers, right? Like our energetic body, our physical body takes on so much information throughout the day. And so then sometimes dropping into sexual space can seem challenging, especially if the two partners are not on the same page, right? Maybe I've had a hard day and you're really stressed or something. And so if we decide to come together and bring it to the altar of the bedroom, we have to work through those layers first, right? In order to find that ooey gooey yummy spot that's like, and we've arrived. And we can feel that. Yeah. We've had a couple instances where we'll drop in and we check in before we drop into intimate space, which is a ritual of ours.
Yeah.
And even just noticing how like we would need to discharge energy from the day first. Or find ways to do that together so that we could get in that space. And I remember there's this moment where we were hugging and it was like, oh, okay, like there you are. I could feel you and you could feel me in that moment because before that there were all these layers of our day, our week that had just compiled on top of each other.
Yeah, all of the baggage that had been brought in. Yeah.
And when there's not attunement and awareness, whether it's a check-in, whether it's this discussion that we're having right now, it could be really challenging for us to go, well, what's wrong here? Or assume that we're not doing something right when really it's like, no, maybe I actually just need a little bit more care.
Yeah, that's true.
Than I did yesterday.
Yeah.
Or than I do in general. And
sure.
Yeah, I think that just feeds the conversation that we're having where it can be healing and in a way that maybe a majority of the population doesn't recognize because A, they don't even realize the weight of the energy or burdens or fear or shame that they're carrying to then go, well, I want this deeply profound experience, but in order to do that, it has to be very emotionally vulnerable because I have to be willing to strip these layers off in order to get to that core of love.
Sure. I mean, this speaks into the tantric philosophy of the layered levels of consciousness, and it is an imagery. It's a visualization, or it's just a guide. It's not literal layers, but the body being the most outer layer of self. If that is carrying disturbances, then getting to the deeper layers of the emotional intimacy and the energetic intimacy can be more challenging. And what I think is also interesting is for you as a female-bodied person, it does take longer for you to get into your body sexually, or it can do, in regards to the openness compared to a male body. The fire's just there. It can switch on in an instant.
Yeah.
Whereas for females, typically it requires a build.
Yeah. Just makes me think of like an example where it's like you could see my body and get turned on. It's like, I'm ready to go. And I could look at your body and I'm like, that's not turning me on. Like, like the look is there and I'm loving it, but my body does not respond that way, you know,
as
like
swiftly.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, but just like the
Thanks. It's just not doing it for me.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if I'm like so, you know, sometimes it's just like, oh my God, put it away. We can't right now. But it's just so different. It's like how the man relates to sex as opposed to the female. It's like if a woman sees a man with an erection, her instinct is not to just all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I'm like open. Sometimes. But for men, it's like they could see breasts and it's like, okay, let's go.
Let's go.
You know, it's just like the way that the brain is programmed differently and the connections that we have.
And I feel like there's something to speak into that. In that, I think it's why men, from my experience, my personal experience and then my anecdotal experience from people that I know in society, I think it's why men do have such a draw towards sexual contact is because it's such a clear, obvious gateway into somatic experience. It's where typically where men can be so direct line to their somatic self.
Without even recognizing they're doing that.
Yes. And I think that's that's how, for me, I feel like that's my direct route into somatic work or into my somatic body. Mm-hmm. That's a nice way to do that. And the difference for women is it's not as direct in the sense that you don't get from the surface to the depth in such a streamlined way. Yeah. But as female body, you're so in tune with your body. You can be, and you are because of the work that you've done, that you know what's going on, and you know when you're, you know where you are in that journey.
Yeah, it's become so, I mean, it gets easier and easier every time to drop into that space. Sometimes I might not be able to pick up on it right away, but during the experience, I'm having so many different micro experiences that's like, oh, why can't I get into this, for example? It's just like, oh, like I'm clenching. Okay, wow, let's like release a little bit. Hey, I'll vocalize. Like, can we slow down for a second? I'm noticing that I'm tense or whatever. Like, and I'm so practiced now that I have no issues sacred pausing. Yes. Hey, I'm noticing something. Or even just being with myself in the moment, even if it takes me out of presence with you for the second, the only reason it does that is because I'm recognizing that I'm already not in presence. So it's like, what do I need to shift here? Is it a physical sensation that I'm actually uncomfortable? Is it like that example where I notice like, oh wow, I actually haven't relaxed and surrendered into this experience. I'm still carrying tension from the day. And that's like going back into like what sex means for me physically. It's connection. You know, it's connection, which is a physiological need. It's like not only do I get
a physical connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like not only do I get the pleasure from touching and receiving touch, but you know, like in my work also, I'm a massive advocate for our bodies being pleasure landscapes. And so it's like I get in this rut when I hear people talk about their sex life being boring or anything where I'm like, there's so much the body has to offer. Just pleasure in general, like bliss, joy, happiness, let alone like actual gratification on a sexual level. Yeah. And so getting the opportunity to explore every inch of my body, every part of me, because some days an area might turn on that didn't before. Right. And so like it fluctuates so much. And that's what it brings me. It brings me excitement to explore my body on a more physical level in ways maybe I haven't before. It brings my body physical pleasure. I there's like this, and I feel like this kind of like loops into a little bit spiritual, but the energy that washes over me when I'm being penetrated and I can feel that I'm fully relaxed and I'm fully in that moment. I feel my heart and I feel your heart. It's still a physical sensation that washes over me, but it's also so energetic and it's so spiritual. That's like little beacons of energy are just like lighting up, and it's just like a sensation of union that feels like that's like really deep presence. I'm not in my to-do list for the day and still kind of having some fun, or in yesterday. I'm like, no, I'm here, I'm with you, my body is responding, all senses are alive, and I love that feeling. I really, really love that feeling.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said about presence. And it's how you can drop into true presence through the somatic.
Yeah.
Like kind of literally, what is alive right now? Like, we're filled with all of these nerve endings. And what is alive in this body right now?
What can I make alive also, right?
And to me, that speaks to our pillars of all of them really, but play in a sense, and then truth. It's like, what is true? What is the truth of my experience in this moment?
Yeah, and how can we work with that in this space, bringing it all to the altar? So that's for me is the physical aspect. Like, yes, it brings physical pleasure, but it also just brings sensation and aliveness to my body. That the only thing that feels comparable is like when I'm dancing to music and spirit has just got a hold of me. They're like one of the same, and that's a spiritual experience. So that's what makes me feel like this also kind of loops into the spiritual aspect for me too.
Right. Yeah.
And there's more layers to that, but
sure. I mean, that's going to be a deeper layer as well.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
And also speaking into the somatic experiences, like when we drop into soma and work with what's present and move through it in a way that can feel vulnerable, aka a sexual space, emotions will naturally arise from that space sometimes. You know,
Sure.
whether it's like a sigh of relief, that's like, oh my God, I finally relaxed for the first time all day, or just pent up emotions that are stored in the body.
Yeah. What a lovely segue, because that takes us into the emotional or heart-mind layer, if you're following tantric, of the experience.
Yeah.
So what I'm my interpretation of that is, through the somatic, you then get to the emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, getting into the emotional body, the vulnerability feels emotional body for me. But also just the sense that the act of sex brings closeness. So if the physical part is connection, that's physical connection, the emotional part for me would be closeness, of depth, of intimacy, of, it's like a deeper layer of connection, in that sense. And also, sex has been emotional safe space. Like, if for whatever reason we're sharing intimacy and I feel overwhelmed with emotion, it could be that you just hit a spot that needed to release emotion that was stored in my body.
Right.
And you happen to hit that.
Right.
Who knows,
so
I could even have my own experience where I'm just processing something from the day, the week, the year, whatever, and then through us breathing together and moving together, that somehow gets unlocked and released, and the next thing I know, I'm crying.
Yeah, I love that.
Also, it could be just experiencing ecstatic bliss. Like, bliss can be emotional too, because it's like, whoa, how can I hold all of this pleasure? Like, there's a lot there.
I like that you've expressed that. One, because of the depth that it brings to your experience, and two, because of the invitation that it's had for me now, where for me, when part of the way that I like to have sex is, I can't put any other words to it. It's like giving internal massage.
Yeah.
And
it feels like that.
That's great. I'm glad. That's the intention. So it's working with your body, because a big part of what massage is finding those areas of tension, areas of trauma, to release that.
Yeah.
And because there's emotion attached to the physical tension, it invites the release of emotion.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're getting that experience. You're getting this alchemical transmuting experience of process.
Yeah. In what feels like the most vulnerable way. Like,
sure.
I can cry right now sitting in this chair, but then when I cry while we're having sex, I'm like in a whole different vulnerable state. And I've seen how in my own experience, sometimes when emotions come up, I feel like it almost takes away from the experience. There was a programmed part of me that was like, don't ruin the mood. Even suppress it for right now, and like later you can go to the bathroom and you can cry, or you can let it out, or whatever.
Why?
Whereas now I embrace the experience.
Yeah.
When it comes.
Yeah, and thank you for your trust in me that I can hold that.
Yeah,
and that it's welcome in the space.
I have no fear.
Thank you.
I have no fear
Yeah,
of that.
I feel that.
Yeah.
And so the question that came up for me when you were sharing that was, why do you think that truth or that belief, that old pattern was there, where it felt like you couldn't express yourself emotionally in a sexual space, which is supposed to be the most intimate, open, expressive space? Do you think that's, one, please speak into your experience, and please feel free to riff on a general narrative or like a more expansive narrative societally.
Yeah, coming from trauma in childhood and seeing the ways in which one of the, there's like 4 main trauma responses. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And fawn doesn't get talked about a lot. And fawn is essentially where you befriend your abuser because it's the safest thing for you to do in the moment. That's what the nervous system believes.
Right.
So you transition over into this fawn-like state. And so for me, as I got older, and in my early 20s, maybe even into my late 20s, sex became performative because that's what I needed to do in order to ensure my safety. So that was always the safe route. So it was like, even if I'm experiencing emotion, suppress it, right? That's just like what I learned in those situations. Like, don't show any emotion, befriend the experience. You can go and cry in a closet later, or cry in the bathroom later about this when like nobody's around and nobody can hear you. And just seeing the way that obviously created an imprint in how I connected to my sexuality, but also how when maybe I would be connecting intimately and I wasn't really feeling anything, I would perform.
Right.
I would experience emotions or something that was challenging. I'd bottle it up. I'd perform just to get through it, right? It was all just like, I'm going to not show anything and just be this like epitome of a vibrant sexual woman and give this person the best experience possible, even if it was actually like a pseudo experience because it wasn't real for me in that moment. When I had to switch into that, it's no longer real. Right? It's an act.
You're not in truth.
Yeah, I wasn't in truth. And so at some point, I connected with that part of myself that landed. That was like, whoa, wow, I'm in performance so much. And like, what is that about? And seeing how that was immediately coupled with how numb I had felt from abuse when I was younger and how much I had shut down my whole body. It was just like, well, it never became about me. It just became about doing the thing. And
when you say that numb, do you mean emotionally numb or physically numb in the sense that you're not getting sensually or sexually stimulated?
It was more physical than anything else.
Yeah.
But it was easy for me, and it was easy for me to also emotionally numb if I felt an experience arising.
Right.
So it's like, crying isn't sexy. It's like when I'm in my 20s and I'm sharing intimacy with somebody, and then for some reason I feel like crying because it triggers a memory.
Yeah.
Then I go, don't cry. That's not sexy. You're going to ruin this whole experience. And this person's going to think you're weird. And then they're never going to see you again. And like, shame, 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 shame that I had this emotional experience. Now that I've done so much certification and healing and trauma and somatic specifically, I was able to make those connections and go, wow, okay, I'm numb. Why am I physically numb? Okay, I could trace it back.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now I notice that I start to perform. Trace that back. And that gave me a framework for where I needed to love myself more. And it was in that journey that then I actually felt my physical body start to open up and my body start to come online. And that had to be a practice that started with me, because I would try to do it with another person, but if people that you're connecting with have no awareness of trauma, it's very hard for people to understand where somebody like me was coming from.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how come you're not having an orgasm or experiencing pleasure? I'm like, well, how much time do you have? Do you want to hear my whole story? And then are you actually going to be able to be with me and hold it and offer what I need? Or are you just going to bounce out? Like, is this even worth my time? And that would be the way that it was in a lot of younger experiences, where it was just easier to make sex about sex. And
about sexual gratification.
About gratification, but even then I wasn't being gratified.
So when you say it makes sex about sex, what do you mean by that?
Just about like, I would want it, and I would want to feel the sense of connection or intimacy, even if my body wasn't experiencing pleasure. Okay. There'd be a part of me that's like,
at least
I'd like to have sex.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to like have something erotic happening.
Right.
So it's like the rush of that energy, but then recognizing that a lot of that rush was actually coming from an unhealed place. And so the ability to now be in spaces where I can be so attuned to the person in front of me and read the energy of where they're at, what their capacity is to hold that. I can also open my body up more, which creates not only safety for me to have these sometimes deeply emotional experiences, but on the plus side of that, have all these other wildly erotic and fiery experiences. Because my body is now receptive, because there's a much stronger connection to my intuition and my own internal compass that goes, okay, this is safe to open here.
Yes, so can you speak into how this is different for you now?
In what way?
In that previously you'd been numb and you'd not felt safe to express. And now, where are you at?
I feel like it's so different. It's interesting though how I will notice, like, for instance, when I'm carrying tension, because I'm like, I'm not feeling you the way that I normally would.
And I can pick up on that.
Yeah. And so there's cues, like, that I'll feel, and that will be one that's like, I feel like I'm in that numb state, and what's up? Oh, okay, I haven't actually released into this experience. Oh, because I'm not actually present with you in this experience. I'm in something else. And just me having awareness of what's going on in my body makes an entire world of difference, let alone being in partnership with somebody that can also pick up on the energetics of tuning in. It's like, hey, you could at any moment tune in and say like, hey, I'm kind of noticing.
Yeah.
Is there something up? Do you want to express something? And your ability to bring me back into love and into that moment is like a piece of that.
Cool. No, thank you. It's like
very cool.
Very cool. Because I feel safe to be able to express that to you, like it will be received.
Yeah.
Like there have been moments where I can tell something is inhibiting your capacity to fully drop into the experience. Like I can tell that it's not being, you're inhibited in some way. It's not being received.
Yeah. And
then having the ability to and invitation to go, hey, take a pause. I'm feeling something is not quite right. Can we work through that?
Yeah.
And that's part of, for me, that's part of the healing element of the practice. It's going, well, this feels what's alive right now. Can we work through that?
Yeah.
Rather than focus on, well, we got to have sex and it's got to have orgasms and sexual gratification. That's why we're doing it. It's like, oh no, this is what's come up through this medicine of bodies engaging physically.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're being invited to address. Let's address it.
Totally. And for women, it feels challenging because, like, maybe it's just that I'm in a mood. Maybe I'm on my moon. There can be so many reasons for, like, why my sexual energy fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even found in some experiences where I come up against my own frustration. That's like, oh, I want to be in the mood and you're here and you're present and like you're like sewing this, and I'm just like, oh, I just don't resonate, you know? And we can work on it and we can bring it up. And then there's times where it's just like, oh, this is just not the moment for me. And getting to honor that also is what helps create that emotional safe space.
Yeah. And the part of the emotional thing from my perspective is I recognize in previous relationships, I would have taken that personally. It's like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I've done something wrong. This is, what have I done? And being in a relationship where the person I'm with is able to communicate that it's something going on with them. And then it
might be hormonal.
Right, yeah. And that's completely fine. It's been healing for me emotionally. Because if we're talking about what sex means to me, and I'm speaking from an emotional place and what it means to me emotionally, it is this space where I get to tune in emotionally, not just with myself, but with you. And I feel like one of the conclusions I've come to for myself, and I then want to expand into males in general, is that it is a space where we're allowed to have an emotional experience, and it is peak emotional experience, and it's a space that, again, like the physical thing, it's like, here's a direct route. and emotionally as well, it's like, here's a route to the heart, through the penis, and if you're open to finding it, you can have an emotional experience. And it's nice to witness when those emotional triggers come up, because they've been triggered by anything that's going on with you, and getting to work through that. So from an emotional point, sex is a way for me to tune into my emotional body and share that with you, be vulnerable from a male point of view. And I value that. And I value getting to attune to your emotional being in a very intimate space.
I feel like, at least for me in my experience, the emotional aspect of sex is what I love the most now. And I think it's because it's the part that I used to be so afraid of, just coming from a trauma background.
Sure.
So being in this space where I do feel safe physically, which allows me then to get into the emotional body. I do feel safe emotionally, which creates spaciousness for me to have these multi-orgasmic cosmic experiences that we've had that are just like, whoa. And then being in the end of that's like, wow, I'm holding so much sensation. Can I hold this sensation? Can I just surrender into this sensation? That's where like the God consciousness starts to come in. That's like, okay, baby girl, just surrender to this. Like, this is bliss. And I'm like, but I'm afraid. And it's like, just let go. And then this whole, like internal spiritual journey that's like associated with, wow, what does this mean to me? And then having that experience, it's like, wow, if and when, and we've had this experiences, I'm able to actually completely surrender and give myself to the altar of the bedroom, give myself to you as an act of devotion of love, give away myself as an act of devotion and love. When I do that, I open myself up more than in any other place in my life. It's the most vulnerable. It's like the mecca of vulnerability. And when I would tune into, well, why am I not having those experiences? I recognized that there was a fear there, because if I was to do that, that meant I couldn't have any armor. I couldn't do anything to protect myself in the moment that I was actually fully open, and it felt very exposing for me. I was like, it feels safer to kind of have these couple shields up and just like tiptoe around it, but then feeling unfulfilled by my sexual encounters, because the truth is that to some degree, even if it was like a pinpoint infraction, I didn't feel safe. Being in a space now where I get to let that release and allow myself to have those experiences brings its own like edge, right? Yeah. I mean, spiritually for me, it is a connection to the divine, and I didn't used to be able to feel that because I was just numbed out, and I didn't feel safe. And so this is just what the theme keeps showing up for me, is like with that safety comes an openness, and with the ability to then open comes the ability to receive. And when I'm receiving, it feels like such a spiritual experience. It can be so transcendental because I get to leave the confines of my body, and I get to merge with your body. Our souls and our energies and our auras merge, and it's for the intention and purpose of literally creating more love, right? Like that's at the core of every time we drop into intimacy. It's like for love. None of it's selfish. We actually, both of us being like givers and receivers, we become quite selfless in our sex practice. And the ability to do that and fully let go and drop my shields, I imagine that you have the same experience. Creates like a spiritual, there's such a bond that happens there.
For me, I feel it's the most vulnerable thing I can do, and it is, I don't know if you can get more, or I can get more in connection with God, universe, divine, whatever label you want to call it, than that. Like the power of sexual energy, it's tantamount to the power of God. It's literally the ability to create life as if from nothing. And from a spiritual point of view, for me, it's getting to devote at the altar of you.
That's so sweet.
And the altar of me, of course.
Of course.
But and the altar of us.
Yeah.
And that's the devotional aspect of what sex is to me. It's, I'm in reverence to your what it really is. Let's go with yoni. I'm in reverence to it. It's a portal to consciousness, to God. Like you literally have the space into which consciousness comes in creation of life. Like it is a portal into something beyond this. And through sex, it's an invitation to honor that. And it's not something. I think it's something I recognized at an unconscious level for a while. But it's only in really getting to have conversations like this and doing my own introspective work that I start to see why the devotional aspect of it is so important.
Yeah, totally.
I think it would be unwise, at least on my part, to not acknowledge what is actually present and on offer and being offered, and the power of that when engaging in sexual practice.
Yeah, I agree with that. It feels like such a disservice for all parties. You know, if you come into the bedroom and you've got something on your mind to work through, but I was just in my own selfishness of, well, I want pleasure and I want it this way, that's such a disservice to both of us, because that's no longer to union, that's to me. It makes it about me, and I feel like that takes it about us. And something that I loved was that we were both sick for a while, and so intimacy was like challenging because both of us just did not feel good at all. And also feeling how much we were both missing that. And I know for me personally, I had a moment where I got really emotional and started crying because I was like, I just feel like I want to connect to you. I'm missing that. I'm missing the sexual connection and the intimacy that we have in that. And so we set up a day that's like, yeah, okay, let's create time and space for this, because we value that so much, the ability to drop into us outside of the independence of what we're creating, what we're doing, and also the day. And when we had that experience, I think it did end up being sexual, right?
No. Maybe mildly.
Right. I remember at the end being like, wow, okay, I need this. And the aspect of devotion came up because we offer each other devotion every night. It's an agreement that we've had since we started dating.
Yeah.
And recognizing where in my own devotion I wasn't actually present in the moment, and how much I recognized that for myself, I needed that full presence and I needed that awareness, because it was in what felt like such a small act of maybe you massaging my lower back because I'm on my moon, for instance. I needed those moments because it brought me back into my body, and it also brought me back into our connection and love. Whereas when we were sick for like that week and a half, I wasn't feeling that. I could feel my neediness being like, okay, I'm getting emotional because I'm getting frustrated because we haven't been intimate, and I haven't been able to drop into my body besides feeling sick and feeling like shit. And then also not feeling like we had connected in a way that I was really missing. And it was just in that moment of us connecting, even sensually, but then later once we started to feel better, more sexual, I was like, oh, okay, like we're back in this like tether space, because we knew that it was there, and of course we knew that our love hadn't changed. Of course. But having over a week of no real physical interaction, I was like, wow, I need that. I need to have these moments of sex prayer and of devotion as like a reset. Because otherwise I could see how my own insecurities would start to kind of fester up, or even my attachment styles would start to reveal themselves.
So it's an opportunity to return to God consciousness, like to step away from the egoic nature of everyday living and return to a devotional space where you're in communion with that which is beyond you.
Yeah, just with love in general. Like I
communion with love.
Needed, maybe even in a physiological sense, to feel that. Because I think at some point, and I'm sure a lot of relationships can relate, if intimacy has waned and it's been a while since we had been intimate, there would be a part of me that where my safety would start to feel threatened.
Yeah, you said.
You know, and whether that's a story or whether that's actually just like a physiological feminine inherent trait that's like, oh, we're not sharing intimacy. Is my safety here being threatened because of that? That started to come up, and
that's
being
so
like,
interesting.
Yeah.
And I love that you shared that. grateful for that. And that then the Sex.Prayers practice was a way to alchemize that.
Yeah, because I brought it.
Right,
I brought
yeah.
it to you. I brought my emotions to you. I was like, this is what's happening for me. And I wouldn't have been able, this is why I love Sex.Prayers, I wouldn't have been able to come to the understanding and the truth of what I was experiencing in the moment had I not brought it to the altar. Had I not brought it to you in general, but also had I not brought it into the bedroom with us. I was like, wow, let's transmute this.
Yes.
Because clearly what I was experiencing was not true for either of us. And just feeling the ways in which, like, when the body's ill, our minds are not in our best state, our emotional bodies are not in the best state, and just feeling like, well, all this is going on at once, and I'm feeling like my safety in our relationship is feeling threatened.
And I love the fact that you brought it into the experience in a way that was invitational of it being transmuted into something positive, because I feel like it's so easy to bring in a negative energetic like that and it negatively impact the experience. Whereas bringing it in a conscious way so that it can be transformed into the positive aspect. It's like, oh, I'm bringing in this negative aspect, but not so that it inhibits the experience, but so that it adds to it.
Totally, because I was like, here's my heart in this moment.
Yeah.
And you're like, let me show you all the ways that I love you. I know the ways that you're safe. And I was like, oh, yes, okay. And then I could receive it, and I just received it with so much love, because there was just this part of me that was like reaching, you know, it was like reaching for that connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's just such an easy and clear example that a lot of other couples could relate to. That's like, wow, not recognizing, it's like, wow, we haven't shared intimacy, and this is actually impacting me to the point where it made me frustrated and then physically sad, because I was like, I'm over this. I'm over this sickness. I'm over feeling this way in my body. Like, I just want to connect. And even when I would try to connect, I was blocked because my body was just like, girl, now is not the time. And then I was in a battle with my body.
Yeah.
And I'm sure so many women can relate to that, especially if, like, you've had kids, or you kind of come in this different conversation with your body. And I'm not speaking to it like I know that, but just for my friends who have had kids, where there's like a disconnect. They want the intimacy and the desire, and the body is just not in a space to be on board. And so then we kind of get in these internal battles.
Well, then, especially if you're not in a space where you're communicating effectively with your partner, because they're going, I imagine, an expectation. Like, I could have easily come into that exchange of being like, oh, we haven't had sex in over a week, and I just really want to have sex. And losing sight of the devotional aspect of it, getting lost in the gratification side of it.
Yeah.
And so getting the opportunity to go, okay, well, this stuff's alive for us. And you to have permission to go, I'm experiencing this right now, and to be able to bring that to me, and for us to work through that together, and it not be an inhibitory aspect or element.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that just came from A, the way that I communicated it, but and B, the fact that it, for me, it wasn't coming from a place of lack, of like, oh, I'm not getting this enough. Like, if we weren't talking about frequency, it was like, oh, we're not having sex enough.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't for us. That's like not the problem at all. It was coming from like an emotional place. I was like, wow, I'm noticing that these are the stories that are coming up, and I'm also finding myself in a battle with myself, and I did the work internally to come to the conclusion that's like, wow, it's because I miss intimacy, and ultimately some part of me was feeling threatened, even though I knew the truth of the matter was that it wasn't.
Yeah.
My emotional nervous system body was like, something doesn't feel right here, right? So it kind of set off, like, it was like a little mini trigger, but I'm so thankful that it happened, because it gave me the opportunity to bring that up and clear that. Yes. So if any time in the future that same energy comes online, I can either self-resource or I can, again, bring it to the altar and just go, hey, I'm
Yes.
noticing this,
Bring
and
it to
I would
the
love for
altar.
the opportunity for us to connect.
Yeah.
Because we spend so much time in the day together, and yeah, we watch our shows, and we connect and do kisses and stuff throughout the day. It's very sweet, but to have
But
the
it's
deep,
like, it's up here.
yeah,
Yeah, you want to
yeah.
get the
I want to
depth.
feel you.
You want
I
to
wanna
feel the depth.
feel your body. I want to feel the depth of your body.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And my body in depth.
And I want that for you and for me.
So deep. I want it like so deep.
So deep.
So deep.
So before we get to, I mean, that was a really nice invitation to talk into frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just want to summarize, or I have us summarize what we want from our sexual exchanges.
Yeah, like circling back around to the beginning of the conversation, I do feel like for us in particular, these are all things that we actually did know intuitively without maybe naming them and claiming them.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that for us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for me to answer your question, it's the pillars. I just need the pillars. And all of those areas are met for me. Like,
So the pillars are met through the layers.
the layers of mentality, of emotionality, of spirituality,
Yeah.
of physicality. Like, if we have play, great. That stimulates my physical body. That stimulates my intellectual body.
Okay.
That stimulates my emotional body
Yeah.
and my spiritual body. If there's empathy, great. That lands for my emotional body because my emotional body feels safe. I think ultimately for me, it's like those pillars are what create the safe space. From there, infinity is possible, right? I'm never more open than when all 5 of those pillars, or the foundation and the 4 pillars, are met. I'm open. I'm an open book if all of those needs are being met, right? Because there's trust there. There's empathy there, which means there's understanding of me and my experience in the moment. I don't have to be anything that I'm not in the moment. I don't have to try to act like it's not bothering me or that I've got stuff on my mind. I can say it. And because the pillar of empathy is there, you can empathize with me, you can feel me, and then you can meet me in that. That satisfies my emotional need. It's like, great. It doesn't have to be about sex, for instance, right? If I'm having a super emotional day and what I'm really desiring is tenderness and you can meet me in that, amazing. That satisfies the emotional need that I have without feeling like I have to be or feel any other way than what I'm actually feeling in the moment, which is the truth pillar. And then communication, my ability to express that. Communication is an intellectual, mental aspect for me.
Okay.
So being able to communicate where I'm at, what my needs, what my desires are, like that's mental foreplay for me. Being able to express my emotions is where I'm at. That's emotional foreplay. Spiritual foreplay just comes from all of it. The ability to interweave all of it and create something that feels symbiotic in the moment. With like omnipresence, you know. So all of those things are...
So honoring of the pillars. Nice. I like that.
They stimulate all 5 areas for me. As well as just like, you know, you're talking mentally. I'm like, that I like what I see. You know, so it's like that I love the setting that we've created. That I love your body and the way that it looks, the way that you're looking at me. All of those things also feed the mentality aspect for me.
Yeah, green.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had this really high-level conversation of what we value and what we desire in these different layers of consciousness: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, divine. And I feel like that leads to the invitation to be specific about the actual practices, the actual exchanges. So having conversations like, this is what I enjoy in the bedroom. This is what I don't like doing. This is what I'm open to trying. This is something that I've been curious about, but I haven't found the right person to explore it with. This is how long I like to have sex for, or this is how many times I'd like to engage sexually during the week on average, because things fluctuate.
Yeah, we don't want to put any pressure
Right.
on that. But it's nice to, just know kind of like where the other person is at. Like, I know that you also love to have sex. Like, you love sex. And it means a lot to you to be able to connect in that way. And knowing, like, okay, like on average, what is that? Is that a couple times a week? Is that every day? It also just creates a conversation that we get to have. It's like, okay, well, where do we want to meet in the middle if we didn't have, let's say, the same sex drive?
Yeah.
Because also, like, for me, I know that frequency depends on my hormones. Like, I know that I'm a sexual person and that I want to have sex all the time and often, even though that's not actually true. There are times that I don't really want to be touched. Yeah. And it's just such a fluctuation of my hormones and mood, while fully knowing that it's like, if I don't have it at the frequency that feels good for me or normal for me, then those infraction points, those like insecurities then start to show up. It's like, hey, is something up? Or
right. And I definitely have felt that, because like at the start of relationships, the frequency with which you have sex is typically quite high. And
ours was so high.
But then there were days where that wasn't present, and the infraction points came into my mental narrative of, oh, she's gone bored of me, or she's not enjoying this anymore, or I've done something wrong. And it's through having the conversations that I know that it's something that you value, and I know that you know that it's something that I value. Yeah. And so when it's not present, it's not that it's being forgotten about, or it's not appreciated or desired. It's just, it's not alive currently. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. Because I know where you are when things are okay. And I know that it's not gone.
Yeah, totally.
And for me as well.
Chances are just buried.
Right, for me as well. Like, if I'm busy, if I'm tired and hungry. Yeah. It's like, no. I need to sleep and I need to eat.
Yeah. If I'm full, no. Sorry, no way. I'm going straight to bed. Don't even try. I'm like, don't even get cuddly. I get nervous.
Yeah. But that was something that I wasn't aware of until you expressed it, and it's nice to know. It's nice to know, because then
of course.
Because then I don't try and engage sexually.
This makes me think of pumpkin hours.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, what are the pumpkin hours? What are the terms and conditions of my sexual availability?
Can you explain pumpkin hours, please?
Yeah. So pumpkin hours is essentially like, they are time frames where sex is essentially off the table. So, for instance, it's like, if I don't want to be woken up with sex, I could say my pumpkin hours, which pumpkin just refers to Cinderella when the carriage turns back into a pumpkin. Yeah. So I could say my pumpkin hours are from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. Like, don't even try to touch me in the middle of the night. Like, pumpkin hours. Yeah. If you do, it's like a violation, right? Or like for me, for instance, it's like, if I just ate a bunch of food and I'm feeling very full, don't even try. Because I'm like, maybe I'm bloated, maybe I'm feeling heavy. The last thing I want is like to shake things up. And so, yeah, that's also like a great conversation. That's like, okay, do you have times where you know for sure you don't want sex? Some people love being woken up in sex, so that's not a pumpkin hour. Right. But maybe they're not morning people, and so they're like, do not try and engage with me from 7:30 in the morning till I've had my coffee and had breakfast and it's past 11. Yeah. People get to dictate that. That's like, okay. Like, if I know that I have an early morning appointment, I would have pumpkin hours the night before. Yeah. I'd be like, no, do not wake me up. I don't care how good this could be. My sleep is way more important to me. You know, so I can claim that, and vice versa. Yeah. Like, for me, it's like, don't try and have sex with me when I'm meditating. Like, that's a I know. It's my horniest time. That's when I'm always trying to have sex with you.
And I'm just completely oblivious.
I know, because you have
I'm
your
somewhere
blindfold
else.
on and you're just like in a
Earplugs
deep trance
in.
state, and I'm just like trying to make it. I'm like,
You're over there trying to be sexy. I'm just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a boundary for me.
Yeah.
Or if I'm like very much in a workspace, I think what speaks into it is like with the sleep thing. It's like knowing that I won't attempt to engage because I know that it's not going to be received, and I respect your boundaries. And if you choose to make that change, then fine.
Yeah,
like,
great.
that's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be open to that. I think it's really great to have those conversations, to know when, rather than smashing my head against a brick wall that's never gonna surrender to me, and getting frustrated and annoyed and upset, I can be like, okay, well, now is not the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when we do want to plan connection, when it isn't just like spur in the moment, we have that time frame to work with too, which just feels supportive. It's like, okay, this like, meeting each other in the middle. And same with like a duration, it's so funny because our experiences tend to be very long. We actually, I remember when we first started dating, we had to create boundaries around our duration because if we had things to do, we're like, okay, we actually can't drop into a sexual space because we know how we get. And we're going to miss the appointment, and then we're going to be mad at ourselves that we didn't go do the thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like duration. It's like, I love quickies. I love the quickies. It's not even necessarily about my orgasm in the quickies. I don't actually expect orgasm in quickies. If I do, bonus. But just that quick, like, gotta have you right now. I'm acting on impulse and compulsion. Yeah. Sometimes I love that. And other times I love our 4-hour experience that we had the other night in our little temple night, because then I got to actually like really let myself go.
Yeah. And I love that.
Like this, I keep doing this. Yeah, I'm letting go. Whoa.
I'm getting
I'm going right now.
I'm getting Team America vibes.
I become a puppet. I just become your puppet.
Sex puppet.
We talk about that.
No, I love that we've brought that into conscious awareness, because for me, I was of the mindset of like, no, I want all my sexual experiences to be like this 4-hour amazing devotional, and it's like, dude, no, you can have like sex prayers in short bursts as well. Like, that's available to you too. It doesn't take away the divinity of it if you don't let it.
Yeah, we don't always have to light the candle and say a prayer and all of that. Sometimes you can just bend me over and play with me.
And that can be equally as like, that can be sex prayers too.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from the divinity of it.
Yeah, to me it all is. Because at least I feel like in our connection, we're so embodied in that intention that like our union is a prayer. And so whether we light the candles and do all the juju or we don't do any of it, it's still all prayer to me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because it's about our connection and it's about our union.
And that awareness of that divine appreciation, the recognition of the altar of us is there. Like, we've acknowledged it. It's present.
It's right here.
Alive.
It's actually right here.
Literally right there.
Yeah, it's right there.
It's something that is of value to us. It's at the heart of our union. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you don't. You can honor it. You can honor its presence in any and all ways. Yeah. Because you know it's there.
Yeah, we do it through communication. We do it through playful flirtation, and we do it through the act of sex also.
Right. And to me, that speaks into the multi-dimensionality of the essence of sex prayers. And I love that.
Yeah, me too. I feel complete with that.
Complete with that.
Yeah.
That's a wrap, people.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Ugh,
Wrap
I
it
get
up.
so